Hello and welcome to my recording of the slide deck, Columbian Exchange and Triangular Slave Trade. Student expectation. I will identify the Columbian Exchange as well as identify the items exchanged in the Triangular Slave Trade. Essential questions. How were the indigenous people of North America impacted after the Columbian Exchange? How were Africans impacted after the Triangular Slave Trade? Columbian Exchange. Columbian Exchange, the exchange of goods between the Old World and New World. Old World is used to describe Europe, the continent doing the colonizing. New World is used to describe the Americas, the continent being colonized. Why is it called Columbian Exchange? The exchange between these two cultures happened only after Christopher Columbus colonized land in the New World for Spain. Use the picture to the right to complete the sentence stem. Because of the Columbian Exchange, indigenous people were introduced to blank. Hint, look at the goods coming from the Old World, aka Europe. Columbian Exchange and indigenous people. Natives were introduced to diseases brought by Europeans. In the 160 years after Columbus came to the Americas, around 95% of the Native American population died. Natives who survived were forced to make room for colonizers. Triangular slave trade. The triangular slave trade involved taking, transporting, and selling of Africans as slaves to the Americas. Look at the picture. Why do you think it's referred to as triangular slave trade? Complete the sentence stem in your notes. It's called the triangular slave trade because, fill in the blank, and pause the video to take the time you need. The triangular slave trade is also called Atlantic slave trade, transatlantic slave trade, and middle passage. Use the picture to complete the sentence stem in your notes. The transatlantic slave trade took place around the blank ocean. 2. The three locations involved in the triangular slave trade were blank, blank, and blank. 3. The raw materials transported from the Caribbean islands were blank, blank, and blank. Check your answers. The transatlantic slave trade took place around the Atlantic Ocean. 2. The three locations involved in the triangular slave trade were Europe, Africa, and the Caribbean islands. I will say if you have the Americas or New World instead of Caribbean islands, that would also be acceptable. 3. The raw materials transported from the Caribbean islands were sugar, cotton, and tobacco. Triangular slave trade conditions. It is estimated around 9 to 11 million Africans were captured and sold as slaves in the Americas. Many Africans died before reaching the Americas. Some died during slave raids when Africans were captured. Captive slaves were forced to march from their tribal homeland to the coastal regions. Many died during this trek. Slave castles. Slaves were held in slave castles while waiting to be transported across the Atlantic Ocean. Slave castles were built by European slave traders. Rooms meant to hold 200 held 1,000 with no water, sanitation, air ventilation, or room to lie down, sometimes for up to 3 months. Many perished or died being held here. Middle Passage. The voyage from Africa to the New World was called the Middle Passage. Slaves were usually loaded on ships in a tight pack, meaning Europeans packed as many slaves as they could below deck. To prevent slave mutiny, slaves were chained together. They had no access to a bathroom, proper food or oxygen, so many more slaves died due to the treatment on the ships. Time to be thoughtful. What is one way the Columbian Exchange is similar to the triangular slave trade? The Columbian Exchange is similar to the triangular slave trade in that they both complete your answer. 2. What is one way the Columbian Exchange is different than the triangular slave trade? The Columbian Exchange is different than the triangular slave trade in that. Complete your answer. Number 3. Describe the treatment of Africans during the triangular slave trade. The treatment of Africans during the triangular slave trade can be described as blank because use the second blank to describe the word you chose to describe Africans during the triangular slave trade. Thank you so much for watching this video on the slide deck. I hope that this was helpful to you.